I invite you to pray. Join me in prayer. Holy One, may the words that I share contain your will, your energy, your direction for us to live and to be according to your will. Amen. Gratitude, much admired as a virtue, largely uncontroversial and widely appreciated. Gratitude plays some part in spiritual traditions, both ancient and newer, and neuroscience, psychology, ethics, and more affirm its value. The Roman philosopher Cicero is quoted with saying, "Gratitude is not only the greatest of virtues, but the parent of all the others." Although many reflexively give the nod to gratitude as a capital good, especially capital N nice, capital T thing, a nice thing, I suggest that gratitude has more power and more transformative potential than we may have been aware. In this short time together, I'll share a bit of what neuroscience and social research indicates to us about gratitude's value and impact. And then I'll offer just a few suggestions, tidbits about how to easily incorporate gratitude practice into your own life. And finally, I'm going to come back to Cicero's comment and touch on gratitude in a spiritual context. So first, ordinarily we think of gratitude as our response to blessings, right? Ooh, something good happened, I'm so grateful. But over the past maybe 30 years, many of us are starting to realize that gratitude is in fact an incredible tool. Gratitude is a tool. Gratitude as a response of the things that come to us sort of unmerited actually ties us to the Christian concept of grace. Gratitude as a tool is something somewhat different. Over the past several decades, as it has been researched in various contexts, I want to mention both neuroscience briefly and social psychology, but the overall end result of this research has been to show that there are mental and emotional and cognitive as well as spiritual benefits to becoming not only responsive to gratitude, but to become resourceful and intentional about it, to begin to look for it in our lives. We can cultivate gratitude. We don't get to an attitude of gratitude, most of us, even though some of us seem to be born with a greater gift for gratitude. Can I have an amen? Yes. You know, some of us here probably have it, some of us know someone who does. But we all have the will, we have the freedom, we have the choice to cultivate it if we invest ourselves in it. So, neuroscience. Some years ago, Oprah Winfrey said that starting a gratitude journal and writing down daily 5 things she was grateful for had been the single most powerful decision she had ever made. Now, knowing Oprah, she may have updated that and have found more powerful things since. But at that time, her testimony to gratitude was very strong. So what goes on when we are grateful? Physically, the benefits are clear. Being grateful, first of all, just feels good, right? It feels good. The feel-good chemicals, for mostly dopamine and serotonin, in our bodies tend to increase when we are grateful. And the bad chemicals, or mostly cortisol, but cortisol is not only a bad, chemical. We need it in situations of flight or fight. Your cortisol better be working if you're going to move or react in some resourceful way. But if cortisol is elevated in us chronically, what is going to happen? To some degree, an ongoing state of anxiety, which I suggest to you may be near epidemic in our country at present. Neuroscientists have a slogan about creating habits, and some of you may have heard it. Neurons that fire together, it's a rhyme, wired together. Neurons that fire together, wired together. Where we repeatedly put our attention shapes us. And whether our attention goes habitually toward the painful or the salutary, repeated attention to those things and the firing of those neurons will likely become a pattern of behavior in us. We know that we tend to find what we look for, right? There's much suffering, injustice, violence. We think of what happened yesterday in Dallas again. But the more we look for it, the more we will see it, perhaps not resourceful. The more we look for gratitude or sort for it in one moment. I'm standing in a grocery line. Why is it moving so slowly? Oh, I can look around and see in this grocery store someone or something that delights me. A sign, a person, candy, whatever it may be, that's a choice we can make. We want those kinds of neurons to fire and work. Now, cultivating gratitude, I always feel I should say this, lest anyone think I'm touting some kind of Pollyanna-ish, just think of the good things and the world will work better. No, I'm thinking of gratitude as kind of a third thing. It's being aware of the blessings in order to become more resourceful to deal with all of the things that are challenges for us. It's really important. In our present societal volatility, and gun violence is one of the primary ones, which is almost constantly in our face. How many more guns in this country than people? I wouldn't believe it if I didn't know the statistics are consistent about it. But in this state right now, the challenges of being in this country right now, our capacity to recover and respond is sorely needed, and gratitude strengthens. Here are 2 R words that you can remember. Gratitude strengthens resilience and resourcefulness. Being able to bounce back from the things that have triggered us, have invalidated us, have disempowered us, whatever it may be, from what kind of suffering, to be able to be resilient. And that word, if you notice, is in the public talk all the time now. Do you notice how many times you hear or see the word resilience? It's because we know we need it living in this time. And resourcefulness. Gratitude supports resourcefulness to be able to respond. A word that covers what gratitude does, one good word is self-regulation. Self-regulation can be a gift, a model, and it can be a resource for the young. To be able to regulate ourselves. Resilience is a part of that. Breath is a part of that. To become resourceful. All of that is a part of self-regulation. I suggest to you, we would not have this one little piece of what's going on with gun violence, which is complex. But if more of us could self-regulate, could use breath or the other tools, gratitude we have, to live more resourcefully and resiliently into this time on Mother Earth, this place in Mother Earth here in the United States and California. Self-regulation. We would not have people who are impulsively shooting one another if the bodies of those people were more self-regulated. Emotion. Recent studies into gratitude and anxiety. There was a study that checked with older people over 60 years old. And often these studies divide people into three groups, kind of a pro group, an anti-group, and a control group, right? Three groups. Well, these three groups, the first group were asked to write gratitude notes and words of positivity. Okay, so they're writing, they're using their body to do this. They're not just thinking about gratitude, they're writing it. The other group was asked to write about their worries. Which group would you like to think of? Well, and the third group was given a neutral task. After the task was completed, each group was exposed to, now I suspect it was a film or some kind of motion picture, but the information didn't tell me this. But all three groups were exposed to something that would arouse anxiety about death. And then after that, the results they had to indicate, they had to be tested again. And the results showed that participants of the first group who had written gratitude notes showed fewer symptoms of anxiety about death than the other two groups. Now, I suspect as you reflect on that, that's not so surprising, right? It's not so surprising. So in that particular study, the results showed that a grateful attitude toward life, or to being in a state of gratitude, in that case, we will tend to become less fearful of the future. And then some of you may have heard of Professor Robert Emmons. He's at UC Davis, has been there for years. He's one of the best, probably best, at least better known researchers, social psychologists on gratitude and happiness at present. And one of his studies that was reported, he asked, I don't know if it was population of students, the subjects were students or others, but the students, the subjects were asked to write daily about things they were grateful for, daily. Writing is often a part of these studies. The results, those folks increased in gratitude. Once again, we're not too surprised, right? But here's the piece that you may not have thought of. Those subjects also reported that they found themselves extending more emotional support to others, helping others with their personal problems, etc. An indication that practicing gratitude does not make us more self-absorbed. Rather, in resilience, resourcefulness, it makes us more able to self-regulate and more inclined to serve others. I want to mention complaining just for a moment with a story that covers gratitude and complaining. Complaining is sort of the opposite of gratitude, right? Well, a friend of mine had been in a marriage of over 30 years and found that she was going through a time of just being really critical of her spouse. Now, I'm sure none of you experienced that, but you might think about it. And she couldn't stop. She tried to stop. You know, well, what you resist, you become, right? That didn't work. She kept doing it. She was a praying woman, so she prayed a lot. That didn't work. She took it to her spiritual director. She said, I don't want to keep sniping, but I can't stop. I'm just finding I'm finding all these things that irritate me almost on an ongoing basis. Her spiritual director, I imagine, took a breath, and then she said, when you go home, here's what I'd like you to do. Be aware of everything, of the things that your husband does and that your husband is, that you are grateful for. And so my friend did this for a period of several weeks, looking for the things for which she was grateful. Taking out the garbage, maybe? Just whatever it might have been. And then about 3 weeks in, on a Friday afternoon when they were sharing each a cup of tea in the kitchen, her spouse looked at her and said, "You're not judging me anymore." And she was kind of shocked. I mean, she'd been doing this, right? But she didn't really know until that moment. It really had impact, right? Changing her experience, changed his experience. He received the blessings of her gratitude. Research tends to show that when we complain, things hormonally are not good in our bodies. But the research that you might not expect is there is some evidence to show that when people complain, it not only is hormonally not so good for them endocrinologically, it is also not so healthy for all the folks who are sitting around listening to it. Or should I say those who are being subjected to it. So that's an interesting phenomenon. All right, so practicing it. You can practice gratitude, cultivate it, by looking outward or looking inward. Both are useful, and you may just find yourself drawn more to one or the other, and over time that may change, or both. Looking outward, you can do in the doctor's office when you're waiting. What is there that I can be grateful for at this time? You can look outward. Of course, we take walks often for that very reason, right? Even if we're not careful, we're not aware of it. We go to places of beauty and seek it out so that we can experience gratitude. That's an outward practice. Inward practice is the sort that Oprah mentioned. Very often gratitude practices talk about writing. And I think the reason for that, I would add to that I have found that speaking what you are grateful for is also useful. Well, think about it. If you become aware of something that you're grateful for and you write it down, you are extending the duration of your gratitude, right? And you are involving more of your body. So more of those neurons are going to fire for a longer period of time. So I think the use of voice in some way is also useful. If you're in public, in the doctor's office, and you found a magazine you really are happy to read, you may not want to say aloud 3 times, "I am very grateful for this magazine." But you can think it inside. That is still a neurological activity. There's something about using the words to affirm the experience that is useful. And the other thing about that is the difference between a wish and a goal. Have any of you heard that? The difference between a wish and a goal is a timeline. Gee, I'd really like to get more grateful. Gee, I think I'm going to write down 3 things I'm grateful for every day. Every day, that's where the time comes in. A goal usually involves a time commitment of some sort. And finally, spirituality. Oh, I want to mention this. One researcher described gratitude practice as, quote, Strength training for our neural pathways. You heard it here. Today, your neural pathways have been affirmed here at First Unitarian. All right, just a bit as we close about spirituality. Now, remember that Cicero quote at the very beginning about gratitude being the parent of all the others. Well, I'm right now presently exploring gratitude as a foundational virtue. Think about it. When you experience gratitude, when you are in a state, let's say, of gratitude, in that moment, you are at home in the world. To be grateful is to be at home in the world. To be grateful, to be in that state, is to know that love is stronger than hate. And to know that light encompasses darkness. That's why cultivating gratitude is so important. Professor Robert Emmons, who I mentioned from Davis, has written, okay, for some of you techies out there, I thought there should be something like that in this sermon. So he has written this with a tech metaphor. Gratitude is an operating system, not an app. It's a way of talking about what I'm calling gratitude being foundational, right? Others have affirmed gratitude as the foundation for a relationship with God. And Meister Eckhart, who was a German mystic who lived over the turn of century 1300s, is most famous for saying, if the only prayer you ever say in your entire life is thank you, that will be enough. And so I conclude this message by saying, I am grateful for this time together. Thank you.